Welcome to the Green Urbanist podcast, where we explore sustainable placemaking, climate action in cities, and urban rewilding. I'm your host, Ross O'Kelly, an urban designer, educator, and sustainable placemaking consultant. Hello, welcome back to the Green Urbanist, and today in this episode I'm talking to four guests about a project called Wilding Campuses. So Wilding Campuses is a project that's led by the charity Students Organising for Sustainability, or SOS to use their acronym. And basically they as a charity partner have attracted funding, and they are working with three partners in England in different educational institutions. All in Nottingham in the Midlands. So they're working with Nottingham College, Archway Learning Trust and University of Nottingham to bring a bit more wildness into their campuses, to bring this idea of wilding to a very urban and a very managed environment, to bring those benefits of biodiversity to the students, to the staff, and also as a way of playing a role in reversing species loss and helping to boost biodiversity in a campus setting. And we're also hearing about what is happening on the ground in terms of the interventions that are actually going in. So I think some good inspiration from that as well. My guests today are Joe Wilkinson and Celine Clarke-Miller, who are both project managers at SOS-UK. So that's the charity that's leading on the project. But then we also have two of the people who are really on the ground in the colleges delivering the projects. And we have Liz Morley from Nottingham College and Ben Wright from Archway Learning Trust. Big thanks to all of them for giving up their time to talk to me. Lots of great learnings from this project, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'd love if you could just introduce yourselves briefly for the listeners. So I'll start with you, Ben.
Hi Ross, my name's Ben. I'm the Biodiversity Officer at Archway Learning Trust. I have a background in RHS, fine gardening, come from an estate background, and I'm responsible for delivering the Wilding Campuses project at Aspley.
Brilliant. Over to you, Joe.
Oh, thanks, Ross. I'm Joe Wilkinson. I am a senior project manager for biodiversity projects at a charity called SOS-UK. So we're a charity that get more students leading on and learning for sustainability. And we're the lead charity partner for the Wilding Campuses programme.
Over to you, Celine.
Yep, hi everyone. So I'm Celine Clarke-Miller. I'm a project manager at SOS-UK, so I work quite closely with Joe. I specialise in a lot of biodiversity work, so I do a lot of our sort of nature-based programmes at SOS, and I've got a background in zoology as well, so very keen interest in this area.
Excellent, thanks. And over to you, Liz.
I'm Liz Morley and I work at Nottingham College. So I'm working with Joe, Celine and Ben on our Wilding Campuses project, doing the Nottingham College part of it, trying to bring loads more biodiversity back to campus. My background's actually teaching photography, but I've been a long time kind of nature nut, obsessive, gardening obsessive. So the role does suit me.
Brilliant. Thank you guys so much. It's really good to be able to speak to all of you on this episode. I want to start by asking, you mentioned about the Wilding Campuses project and you're all involved with wilding or rewilding, but can you tell me what is your definition of urban rewilding, or if you use a different term, what is that? And I'd like to start maybe with the SOS team.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Ross. We actually use a different term. So for this programme, we use the term wilding instead of rewilding. There was a lot of thought and conversation within the charity that went into that decision. And we landed on wilding. This was a few years ago now, because it struck us as a slightly less controversial term. And, it kind of brings up these kind of ideas of, large scale predators, and because we're working on campus grounds, we didn't want anybody to get the wrong kind of idea as to what the programme was about. So we landed on wilding, and for us, the kind of simplified definition of that is really sort of changing an environment to make it more similar to how it was before humans altered it. So that's really what we mean when we're talking about wilding. We're doing this with the help of lots of local experts. So we're bringing in the Wildlife Trust to make sure that any changes that are happening on the campuses are sort of in line with local nature recovery plans and priorities, so that the wilding that's taking place kind of makes sense for the context that it's in.
Yeah, we use the same term of wilding across other projects we do, like wilding schools as well. We just found that it feels like a more accessible term, and a bit like Joe said, the public often associates the term rewilding with sort of really large scale, massive projects, so like things like bringing back beavers and wolves, reforesting large areas, but obviously urban wilding is very much more sort of focused on trying to make a place work for nature and people, and trying to sort of make some smaller changes that add up. So we sort of found this term was a bit more accessible and a little bit less sort of misleading in terms of what the public thought of it.
That's great. Thanks for that. I can totally see the reasoning behind it. And I've had previous guests talk about similar things, which is that it's a really word that has a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people, and it can be quite hard to get everyone on the same page about it. What about you, Liz? Is which term do you like to use, and what does that mean to you?
So yeah, definitely, because we're working in a city that's been built up for a very long time, I think wilding rather than rewilding, it's like, I'm not quite sure kind of what Nottingham would have been like. I know it had a marsh before they built the Broad Marsh shopping centre. So I don't know. I think it's kind of beyond our capabilities to bring back a lot of marsh to our college campuses. So wilding's better probably than rewilding. I also really love the term nature-based solutions. Something that I have found, and I think you probably are going to ask us a bit more about it later, is that when you say kind of wild or rewild to people, they think of mess. And if you talk about solutions, nature-based solutions, then people tend to kind of feel like, oh, it's offering something really positive. So that's a term that I've kind of been using quite a lot when I've been trying to win people round to the ideas that we're trying to implement.
That's lovely, thanks. Ben, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think for us, it's in context. It's about finding a baseline of what exists currently in our urban environment. So, do we have badgers? Do we have foxes? Do we have any sort of rare birds that we might want to protect? And once we understand what we do have on campus, it's then about protecting it and maximising or find ways of maximizing ways to protect these sort of habitats and grow them. So it's more about making improvements to what we've already got here.
Excellent, thanks guys. That's really quite illuminating, and leads us into talking about your projects. So maybe someone from SOS, if you can tell us maybe just at the broad level what this sort of overarching project is about, and then we can get into some of the details of from Liz and Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. We really love this project. It's one that's been a long time in the coming. So we're glad that it's up and running now. Just a bit of the sort of context for why we wanted to do it. Well, we know that the UK is one of the least biodiverse countries in the world. Almost half of all bird species in the UK are in decline. Flying insects have declined by something like 60% in the last 20 years. So a big part of this is to do with loss of habitat for species that really need it. So we wanted to build a project that kind of addressed that as an issue. And we also know that students really want wilder spaces. They want wilder spaces where they learn. And staff too, they want wilder spaces where they work. We did some research actually at SOS-UK last year, I think it was, with 2,000 or 3,000 higher and further education students. And we asked them a load of questions about their kind of enjoyment of access to nature and just what they thought about nature. And it showed that some kind of overwhelming number, sort of near 90% of students think that their university and college should do more to protect nature, and that around 65% of them think that they should be given more opportunities to experience nature where they learn. So we were like, that was good news. But we were also quite surprised to hear that almost 20% of those students said that they don't have a way to access places that they can enjoy nature near them. So this is kind of a project that is addressing that. Let's bring the nature to them on campus.
Yeah, to follow up with Joe, we found at SOS that actually there's a lot of sort of capacity from education estates to make change. So if you look at all the sort of grounds that schools, colleges and universities own across the UK, it's actually a really large area. I think there's a stat that I think all the sort of school-owned estate is around the size of Birmingham, for example. So that's a really large chunk of us if you think about all the grounds adding up together. And we did our own research at SOS-UK and found that if universities and colleges they, by themselves actually have around 30,000 hectares of outdoor space. So if you can imagine all those spaces actually being used positively for nature space solutions, as Liz nicely put it, then obviously that's a huge sort of capacity for making some really positive changes and bringing back nature across the UK, especially in urban areas. So the idea of the project of Wilding Campuses was to make this partnership between SOS-UK, the University of Nottingham, Blue Castle Academy and also Nottingham College to sort of have this local partnerships together working to rewild the city. And when we decided to do the Wilding Campuses project, we found there was a lot of interest from different sites across the UK, but we found that Nottingham particularly had this sort of keen cohort of institutions that wanted to make a change, so that's why we decided to specialise in this area. And it's all been funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund as well, so thanks to their funding we've managed to do this project, and have actually got lots of exciting plans to make some bigger scale changes thanks to that funding as well.
We have only just started the project, but we've already had some successes working in this regional partnership. The partners are all fantastic. We've got 2 out of the 3 of them here today. And we really love this kind of local partnership approach because it means that each of the partner campuses can build on each other's learning and support each other with the actions that they're taking. So it's a totally new way of doing things for us at SOS UK, but we think potentially it's something that we might be able to learn from and replicate the project in the future. We also really like the part of the project that is getting sort of engagement from students from a range of different backgrounds. So that's another kind of key part of the programme. So it's not just the wildlife, it's the people as well. And in particular, it's getting students, staff, community members involved who previously maybe didn't see nature as something that's for them. So yeah, that's something we're really excited about as well.
That's lovely, thank you. That's all absolutely fascinating, and I think paints a picture of how big an opportunity this is, and hopefully inspires lots of other campuses around the UK to take action as well. If we can start with Liz to tell us a bit about what are you doing on your campus and what's involved?
Yeah, certainly. So Nottingham College is pretty big. We've got 9 different campuses across the city, so loads of space to play with, but it also means that it kind of in a way makes it harder to prioritise where to begin, and there's so many people to kind of round up and say, look, we've got this money, what shall we do with it, who wants to get involved? It's kind of the first thing that we had to do was a lot of talking to people, basically, trying to get the word out there and trying to find out which members of staff in the college were interested, which students wanted to get involved. So we've done a big poster campaign and put up a load of posters to kind of try and generate interest, done loads of welcome events where students who are joining the college get told all about the campus. And I've been around all the different teams and been to their team meetings, and then just tried to draw people in who were interested. And so in terms of actual practical stuff, then we had some really kind of neglected, they were originally amazing flower beds out the front of our city hub campus. That's right in the heart of Nottingham, really near the train station. It's on a public thoroughfare, it's public space, so people walk past it every single day. And a few years ago the council put it in as kind of amazing, almost like Piet Oudolf style mixed perennial planting. I don't know if anyone knows who that is, but he's kind of the daddy of putting in wafty grasses and then loads of flowers for pollinators. And so because the council, Nottingham Council, were struggling financially as well at the time, they didn't manage to get a maintenance, there was no maintenance gardening done on it. There was literally just kind of a couple of men with strimmers had come down and strim it every so often, and all that strimming, it kind of didn't kill off the pernicious weeds that blew in. And I mean, with wilding, there's a balance to be struck, because where I'm working at our city hub, it's public space. And obviously we all know that kind of native wildflowers, native plants are good and positive and beneficial for wildlife. But also I think for our project, if you say if I just kind of let that area be recolonised by whatever kind of plants would naturally emerge, a lot of people would just see it as being neglected. So it's striking that balance between making it work for nature and making it work for people as well, winning people's hearts and minds and creating a space that's beautiful and biodiverse. So I've replanted a big chunk of that area already with more pollinator friendly plants that are more suitable for the space, and perhaps things that are going to be a bit more low maintenance than the stuff they're putting in the first place. Built loads of habitat, so we've made compost piles, we've put in loads of dead wood, which is something that's really missing from a lot of spaces that are managed by people. It's like people don't want dead wood around, because if it's up in a tree, they see it as a health hazard. It's going to fall down and clonk someone on the head. People see kind of piles of like twigs and logs and things as being messy. So we've put all these kind of sculptural swathes of logs going through the beds there, so it looks nice, but it's also going to be a good home for little creatures to live in. Planted loads and loads of bulbs. I've just received another box today as well with another kind of 4,000 flower bulbs, so we're going to have tons of kind of stuff in spring for early flying bees, like bumblebees in particular. Hopefully we'll love that. So our City Hub campus, we're kind of getting there with that one. We've got another campus, Baseford, which has quite a lot of land, and I'm currently working with estates to try and get our maintenance calendar sorted out for next year, so we can leave areas of it to become natural meadow. We've got plans to put an orchard in there as well, and dig a pond, because as well as there's like different kinds of habitat that are really important to wildlife. And I don't know if you heard the study that Ken Thompson did at the University of Sheffield, his Biodiversity in Urban Gardens study, like the bugs study. So this was a really nice one for urban nature, where his team did research all across a whole load of gardens in Sheffield, looking at what improved biodiversity and looking at kind of what was bad for biodiversity. And they found that the things that improved biodiversity the most was dense planting and a tree as well. So we've put some trees in, but also water in a garden. And so we're going to put a pond in at our Baseford campus and try and give all the creatures access to like water that's there all year round. I think that's really important. It's kind of, we're spreading out across the campuses. We're building a courtyard garden in one of our most kind of inner city urban spaces, which is literally at the moment just stone slabs and then brick pavers. So that's our Adams building, which is this big old listed Victorian lace mill. It's a fantastic building, and there is nothing green there really at all. They had a few galvanised water tanks with a couple of holly trees in, and from that we're going to kind of extend that, use planters to make a courtyard garden there. So all of our different campuses, although it's like spreading ourselves quite thin across all the different campuses, there's so many opportunities there, and we're just kind of starting to get stuck into the physical kind of action, what's going to make things work. Another thing, sorry, I'll give someone else a chance to talk in a second. Another thing is habitat in terms of places for creatures to live. I've talked a bit about the logs, but we're putting in bird boxes around all the campuses as well. And we're actually going to work with a company called Future Makers in Nottingham. They're a little business who they're engaged with plastic recycling. So they get donations of food grade plastic, old milk bottles, quality street tubs, stuff like that. And then they have machines where they can pulverize that plastic, press it into big sheets, and from those sheets they can recreate kind of different chairs, tables, but also they've been working with the Wildlife Trust to design some bird boxes. So a load of our chemistry and art and design students are going to go down there and make all of these bird boxes from their recycled products. They're doing some fantastic stuff down there as well with like wheat husks and agricultural waste, so they can actually make that into bioplastics, and from that hopefully we'll be making bird boxes to go up all around campuses, and the students get to learn a bit about kind of the cycles of what happens to waste as well, so hopefully helping people think about that as well. I think that's it. I'm about done there.
That's so inspiring. Thanks, Liz. So great to hear like so many things happening, and I really like the idea of taking quite a designerly approach to wilding, so people can see that someone is caring for the space, and I guess it almost becomes like a bit of artwork as well as a biodiverse space. So yeah,
I think in
brilliant.
the city that's quite important, isn't it? There's so many people there, and so many kind of hearts and minds to try and win over. And yeah, so many people that seem to be very worried about mess as well, and things looking scruffy. So it seems to be the approach that's working for us.
And actually, while you're on that point, did you do a lot of community engagement or community involvement with the project, or was it mostly the students and staff?
So there's been a little bit of community engagement, yeah. So we've had engagement from kind of local gardening clubs, and local gardeners have come down and helped out, volunteered. We've had Kat, who's the gardener from Bromley House Library, donated tons and tons of leaf mould to us that they'd made in their like urban city centre garden, which was amazing. And she came down and helped out a bit. We've had help from Jack, who runs a company called Grow Knots, and another gardener, Andy Callow, and kind of the community that I suppose has been most involved so far has been the community that's already interested in gardening and nature. But part of the plan is to take that wider and get more of the local community involved, and perhaps, again, people who haven't got such a gardening background or such a nature-y background.
Lovely. Sounds good. Right, over to you, Ben. Tell us a bit about your project.
That's a hard one to follow, isn't it? That's absolutely fantastic. Liz has done some wonderful job, and what's fascinating as well is that, strictly speaking, colleges, schools, they almost compete for students to go to them for education. And this project really shows how well we can team up together to make such a big difference. It's absolutely wonderful that we're teaming up. So what are we doing at Aspley? So we got a company called EMEC out who conducted a baseline survey of what we have here. And if you zoom out on Google Earth and have a look at what our campus looks like, it's essentially a big building with some grass, trees around, and some hedges. And we expected, as you walk through this campus, some form of biodiversity on this survey that came back. And typically, when the survey did come back, it came back with, you have very, very little biodiversity, which was a bit of a joke, but equally what a wonderful springboard into this sort of project. So some of the information that we got back was you have absolutely nothing that feeds birds. You have nowhere where reptiles can go and live. You have some mammals, but they basically exist on your fence line. I mean, it's catastrophic when you look at the footprint that some of our institutions have. So it's hugely important that we're taking these sort of steps to restore biodiversity. So in our case, we've got some of the students out on Monday, and we've started installing plant species that were recommended, things like Rosa canina and some other bits that promote pollination. Just to try and lift biodiversity, we're trying to install these kind of metal containers as well for log piles, so it looks more attractive. So I think one of the issues that we're finding in a school environment is it would be lovely to have a woodland setting. I think everyone would love that so much, but the trouble is it's not practical, and we need to make this a practical space too. So if we can make things like wood piles friendly for insects and lizards and everything else, but make it look attractive too. That's the kind of key thing.
That is lovely. Thank you, Ben. God, there's so much happening. And I think like your story sort of highlights the importance of also starting with a good baseline understanding of what's there and what's needed. So that's really good. And also, as both of you sort of made clear, you're both schools, so having educational aspects of the wilding and having them as multifunctional spaces is really important as well. But those are things we could be doing in urban parks and streets and other non-school places as well. So really inspiring. I would, if I loop back around, I just asked the SOS team again, just like the real beginning of this project, who sort of kickstarted it? Was it an idea from within your team, or did someone else have the idea originally? Just tell me a little bit about what was the very start of it.
The idea for this programme actually started before I even began at the charity, but was, I think, the brainchild of our executive director, Jamie, who is just nuts about nature. And so I sort of joined the team. When did I join the team? 2022. I think by that point, the idea for the programme was kind of more or less sketched out. And we'd done some initial scoping with Nottingham institutions, but also higher education and further education institutions across quite a broad spectrum of the UK. And it was just a case of kind of trying to nail down who really specifically we wanted to work with. And yeah, we landed on Nottingham as this kind of very, very urban region with a network of like really, really keen champions for this sort of work. But yeah, so it was definitely the brainchild of Jamie. But we're really lucky at SOS because we've got a team of biodiversity people, Celine, myself, and yeah, a few other staff members that were able to feed into what this project looked like in the end. Celine, I think you were actually involved in the original bid, so perhaps you can say a little more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was just involved briefly in it, but yeah, it's been a running idea for a while to sort of, as I said, try and really maximise what we can do on those sort of HE and FE grounds areas. As I mentioned earlier, obviously they have a huge amount of land in the UK, so it's trying to look at how we can actually use that education estate. And as I've been here at SOS over the last 4 years, we've started working more and more with schools as well, so we're sort of moving into this area of working with school education settings too, and trying to make sure we can use their grounds, as Ben mentioned, for sort of access to nature as well, especially for children that don't necessarily have it. So yeah, it's been quite a long running idea, and I think it was just really great that we managed to get that Nottingham partnership because all three institutions were interested in it. And it's a very nice local sort of chance to do, collaborative working, which is quite different to what we've done before.
Lovely. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. Thanks. So I'd be interested to know from Liz and Ben, what were some of the challenges that you found in this project, and what advice would you give for other, we'll say, schools or colleges who are looking to do something similar?
Oh yeah, we've had quite a few different challenges with the project, which is part of the fun of it, really, trying to find kind of ways to to feel like you've won and biodiversity will be enriched. So yeah, I think everything from like I was talking about our Adams campus in the old lace mill. There's no water supply there, so for the courtyard garden, because it's a listed building, we said, well, can we just put some water butts in? They went, no, the drain pipes are like Georgian cast iron drain pipes, you can't do that. And then we finally got them to agree to like put a outside tap on. It's a shame we couldn't harvest the rainwater there, but that's because of all of the different hoops you have to jump through. It's going to take kind of like half a year to get the tap there, so before then it's going to be like me running around with watering cans. And luckily our people who work in the CAF there, our canteen staff, are so lovely. They're all like, yeah, we'll do loads of watering. They've been pitching in to help out with that, so that's really nice of them. We've had loads of challenges with the idea that nature equals mess as well, and so one of our campuses, quite a few of the neighbours aren't really, I don't know kind of quite what's happened there in the past. I'm still trying to get to the bottom of it. But a lot of the neighbours start to complain if they see kind of the grass isn't being mown. They look over the college fence and then they'll send kind of a lot of emails saying, look, these weeds are blowing over into our gardens. There's going to be brambles creeping over. And our estates team are very, very concerned about rats, which Celine's been brilliant helping us out with kind of, getting all the information together to try and like just inform them. So tons of challenges, everything from kind of challenges convincing people that it's the right thing to do, challenges with the kind of infrastructure that we're working with. I haven't had the same challenges as Ben with the kind of poor soils thing, because for me, I think that our areas that are kind of gravel, grit, rubble, I'm looking at kind of using those to plant Mediterranean plants, stuff like that, and things that really all just grow in almost like pure rock, grit, sand. And there's a whole palette of plants that we're going to be using there. But a big challenge for me has been sourcing peat-free plants as well. So flower bulbs have been really good. I've been trying to source organic flower bulbs because then they don't have the neonicotinoids in that could maybe potentially cause problems for flying insects further down the line. And that's been quite a challenge, finding a good source of organic flower bulbs that isn't extortionately expensive. Peat-free plants, I've ended up finding a supplier that will supply us with bare root plants. I think Ben's solution of kind of going from seed is brilliant. That's a really good solution because then you're not worried about peat-free plants. But like Ben was saying, where there's areas where it is just rubble, you can't necessarily seed straight into that. You might have to grow the plants first and then put them into those hard conditions afterwards. Yeah, there's been a lot of challenges, but I'm kind of enjoying working my way through and ticking them all off. Yeah, feeling like I'm making a bit of progress. So any challenge is going to be overcome.
That's great. It's a really good insight into the practicalities of running projects like this. And yeah, sure, a lot of creative solution finding. Thanks for that. We're into our last question. I don't know where the time has gone, but I've been really enjoying this. The last question is around if we zoom out and think about urban wilding as a wider movement. And, you know, a real question for you guys is, do you see this as something that could be scaled up, that could be happening in other places? And what would be your idea of success for a wider urban wilding movement? Does anyone want to jump in on that? Does anyone have sort of immediate thoughts on that?
I guess from our perspective, SOS, this program is a pilot, and the whole point of it is that we can develop something and learn from the challenges, learn from mistakes, and develop something that will work for the sector as a whole. So we want by the end of this program to have something that we can scale up. That is the intention. And I guess, like Liz, you mentioned trying to convince people about messy spaces being best for wildlife. Like that's one of the things that we're kind of hoping we can do with this program. It's actually one of the things we're hoping we can do with all of our biodiversity programs at SOS, because it is just it's a recurring challenge. If we can crack that for the sector, then I think, you know, wildlife will get a really big boost. And there's, you know, you've both Ben and yourself, Liz, mentioned this a few times today, but like we think really crucially that if this is going to work, then it's got to work for people, and it's got to work for nature as well. So we need to find some really practical ways of doing this and doing it properly, because urban spaces are, you know, quite limited in terms of what can actually be changed. So we really need to tackle that.
Yeah, I think it starts showing that we actually can make changes where it might seem like you can't. So we often, when we talk to schools for various projects or, you know, universities, colleges, there's often the can't do this, can't do that, this has to be left for, you know, sports fields, or we can't change this building, or, you know, there's always some limitations. So I think it's really about focusing on what actually can be done and making sure that we've got a nice case study that then we can actually show other places that, yes, even if you have got limited space, if you've got lots of concrete, if you've got a big car park, there are things you can do in that space. So I think urban wilding specifically requires a lot more creativity potentially than you might have just general wilding, because you have to think out the box, maybe using vertical spaces like Ben mentioned earlier on, potentially using things like roofs. You know, can you rewild part of the car park? Could you use the margins? Sometimes it's just changing how ground's managed as well, so like reducing pesticide uses. Obviously you're not actually changing the space that much, but you're changing the way it's managed massively, so that really helps wildlife too. So there's a lot trying to find those sort of solutions that are a bit more out of the box and potentially less obvious. And also fostering connectivity. So obviously a lot of our urban spaces in the UK are very fragmented. So there's not much connection between different habitats. So we really want for this and other projects to make sure that we sort of connect those wild spaces, the little pockets of nature that are found in cities, they actually are joined up so wildlife can move across. And finally, I think the main thing as well from our side is just to make sure we engage the wider community and the next generation to really sort of have a sense of ownership. That way you actually, even after the legacy of the project ends, obviously there's a sense of ownership from the local community, the local students, it's much more likely to continue, and hopefully they'll take those ideas home and also spread them across wherever they go in future. So trying to make sure they have that sort of sense of ownership and pride about their world spaces.
That's great. Thank you so much. Over to you, Liz.
Yeah, there's a few points about the future of kind of urban wilding. I think at the moment there's still a massive disconnect in education between people and nature, and the fact that when I go to our biology class and I say, okay, what are you learning about ecosystems? They go, we're learning about the Amazon rainforest. And then you go to their teachers and go, what about our ecosystems here? Can we do something to do with the kind of local city, urban nature ecosystems? And then they're like, no. But that's what we need to do. We do need to make sure that students are looking at what's around them and realising that it's all vital for the well-being of people as well. So clean air, stopping flooding, clean water, it all depends on plant life, and then healthy ecosystems are absolutely vital to kind of our own health and our own well-being as well. So education is a massive thing, and I've just got this utopian vision. Do you want to hear about my vision of the future where nature is really valued, where every single school has a garden and kids learn about how you grow plants, look after plants, and what the kind of care looks like and means in terms of time, and where councils as well have the funding to kind of imagine if every city had like a team of like urban rangers that were going around just working kind of in favour of biodiversity, but also keeping spaces kind of functioning and beautiful for people as well. It would be amazing. And I think part of that is valuing kind of land-based industries, valuing the idea of gardening as a career, horticulture, and valuing ecology, nature, and not seeing it as like some kind of thing that doesn't matter for people. People seem to have got into this mindset of what matters is the media and what kind of car you drive and how much money you're earning, but really everything depends on having a healthy ecosystem for our survival, for our future, for our happiness as well. And it's time that was kind of valued. So in my utopian vision of future wilding, it would be everyone was like, and like Celine was saying and Joe was saying, at the moment they said 20% of kids said they had no way of interacting with nature or accessing nature. It's like everybody would not just kind of have the opportunity to interact with nature, but be actively taught the importance of that. And then from there, I think hopefully we could start to see like a sea change and value green in the urban space and value opportunities for bringing wildlife into the urban space too.
That's so lovely. I would endorse this vision wholeheartedly. What do you think needs to happen to sort of get us there? What do you think are the things that are missing at the moment?
So funding is a massive thing. The money getting put in the right place is really, really important. And that's something that has been absolutely brilliant about this project. The National Lottery actually putting some money towards it has paid for my time to kind of go around and start enthusing everybody. It's paid for plants, it's paid for changes to the land. And so money is a massive thing, but you know, it's a mindset thing as well. But it's almost like a catch-22 situation that we've got into. While we're not there in direct contact with the soil, not growing things, not out kind of seeing what nature is around us, then we do get that detachment from it. And from there, we stop caring so much. So it's like we need some big changes in terms of the funding for this kind of thing. And like at college, our college, Nottingham College, 25,000 students, we don't offer a single kind of land-based course, which is something that I'm desperately trying to change as well, trying to convince everybody that it is kind of worth us running courses where students can start building up that connection with nature and valuing those roles that are going to be stewardship roles in the future.
That was lovely. Thank you. SOS team, anything to add?
I guess part of the pilot and towards the end of the period of the pilot, we'll be pulling all the partners together to think about, okay, well, what do we actually need in order for this hopefully very successful programme to be scaled up? And I anticipate that that's going to be the biggest thing. People say, well, they need the money, they need the staff time, which costs money. And they need to be able to have access to funds that allow them to make some of these practical changes. So I think that's probably going to be the main thing we need to address if we're asking other linked partnerships, schools, colleges, universities in other cities to do this. Who's going to pay for it? So I think that'll be an interesting sticking point when we get to that. And if we can find some solutions, then great. But yeah, time will tell on that one.
Celine, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
I think just reflecting very much Liz and Joe's points, I think one of the best things about this project, compared to a lot of other projects I've worked on actually at SOS, is the fact that we've got the Heritage Lottery Fund actually funding staff time at the institutions, which is just very unusual. For example, we've got other like Wilding Schools projects, other things we do at SOS, where I find staff capacity is such a tricky one, and obviously through no fault of their own, teachers and other school staff are just so busy and so overwhelmed with the curriculum and trying to sort of keep the bare minimum ticking over. So I think a project that actually has funding for specific staff at each institution to actually enact and plan and deliver these things is so important, and that's what I'm really enjoying about this project actually compared to other ones I've worked in the past. But likewise, we've also got funding for sort of engagement and trying to be more creative with how we engage students, and a big part of the Heritage Lottery Fund sort of project was to engage students who wouldn't normally engage with necessarily this sort of area. So trying to make sure the events are accessible, sort of, we're reaching out to students that are maybe not the traditional ones who'd normally go out and do some wilding, do some gardening. And Liz has been really fantastic at doing this actually. I don't know if Liz, you want to jump in, but I know that Liz has been great at getting some specific courses that potentially would never normally do anything like this in a day-to-day life, actually out onto the campus doing things, and actually the students are learning by having the fun day out, obviously, and actually doing something practical.
Oh yeah, we've had teams of hairdressers down from our hairdressing courses getting stuck in, and it really clicked with some of them. Some of them were really not convinced, but some of them loved it. We've had students from our construction department who are kind of, that was quite an interesting day having them down. Our SEND students, special educational needs and disability students coming down and getting stuck in, and they did a brilliant job of planting loads of bulbs, planting loads of plants for us, sowing seeds, and just even like photography students, art students, I'm trying to just bring in as many different young people from as many different backgrounds and as many different areas as possible, to try and give them all that kind of chance to just give it a go and see if it's something that they're interested in and enjoy or not. That's great.
What were you doing with the hairdressers out in nature?
They were planting a little micro forest, clearing loads of soil that had just got overgrown with couch grass and planting a micro forest there. And they planted loads of spring bulbs as well. So getting stuck in getting their hands in the soil, and they all had like fantastic kind of like inch-long manicured nails in all kinds of rainbow colours, and we're still kind of getting stuck in and giving it a go. And yeah, I'd say it was about half and half. Half of them thought it was brilliant, and then half of them were really not that convinced. But the way we kind of got into it, I was asking them all, so who's interested in nature? And none of them said yes. I was like, who likes little birds? They were like, some of them were like, oh no, I hate them flapping near me. And then I was like, who's got tattoos? And then quite a few of the girls had butterfly and flower tattoos. I was like, aha! So what if we plant some flowers that are going to bring like the real butterflies in and make the whole place more beautiful? And then a lot of them were kind of, they could see like that what we were doing in this dirt, what they saw as kind of dirt, like getting mucky and stuff that they wouldn't normally kind of be touching or going anywhere near. And these bulbs that look weird, they were like holding them up going, what is this? Is it a mushroom? Why is it all like manky looking? And then I was showing them all the different flowers that they'd grow into, and they were really, a lot of them were really sold on it, and were like, oh yeah, when we come back in spring we'll be able to see them all in flower. I was like, yeah, it's going to look brilliant. So that was a really nice day getting them involved with kind of planting flowers. They really enjoyed, a lot of them really enjoyed it. So yeah, trying to kind of reach students that might not have had that opportunity before, and it doesn't kind of work for every single student. It's like some people have got, I don't know. I mean, with our SEND students, some of them have that sensory thing where they don't want to kind of get their hands dirty. So we make sure we've got gloves for them and that they don't actually have to directly kind of touch things that are going to make them feel horrible or stressed out. And we're trying to kind of find ways for the students that wouldn't think that gardening was for them, try and find ways to kind of show them that they could maybe give it a go, and they might just see that it is something that's worthwhile.
I think that's such a good point, Liz, and I think that's where our project, being an urban wilding project, has to sort of work. You have to find ways that's going to engage people who potentially don't think nature is for them, or don't think the wild spaces are necessarily that important, or don't have that personal connection just yet. So trying to find, like Liz said, just those little things that make them feel actually, oh yeah, I do have a connection to nature. I do actually care about local spaces. Like trying to find those individual sort of reasons to care, and that's what's quite impactful, I think. And hopefully the students go home and actually think about things a little bit more, having had a chance to actually try something out.
That is excellent. Thank you guys. Really, really great story there. And I think it, as you said, it's really about making nature relevant to people's lives and meeting them where they are, rather than trying to convince them that they need to care about these things. Really, really good. Ben, you have returned. Thank you so much for joining again. I'll pitch you the last question, which was in terms of the urban rewilding movement in as a whole, or urban wilding. What do you think would be success for you, and do you think there's potential for this to become more mainstream?
Excellent question. I think for me, biodiversity net gain is probably one of the big things for me. So every time a development is happening, we have a formula of measuring habitat creation at 10% gain as to what it was before. And to me, 10% isn't ambitious enough. We've got these huge monolithic buildings, and we need them. Absolutely, we do. They're practical, particularly in an urban environment. And then you see this tiny little strip of trees that the poor things don't have, a chance of surviving. So 10% is unambitious and uninspiring. And I think it would be nice to see if that could increase to 25%. If you said 75% practically your space, 25% give that away, I think most people would say that's pretty fair, but it's not. 10% is the sort of the minimum here. So I think that for me, seeing that number increase would be absolutely huge, and it not being seen as a tick box exercise. I'm not sure if you've ever applied for one of these processes before, if you've seen the kind of formula, but it's tedious, and it's there for a reason. It's a wonderful tool. The purpose of it's fantastic, but going through the exercise is tedious. So this is a process where it could be seen as really, really positive, a place for creation. You are creating a garden, you're creating a habitat. This is something people train for, something that you can draw pictures and show people and inspire people what you're doing. But instead, it's a spreadsheet formula completed by an ecology team with lots of fancy words and numbers. We need to make this more simpler and get people on board. So for me, that's what I would like to see changed in the short term.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think the way that more biodiversity, more wilding in cities can be tagged on to something that is already existing. You don't necessarily need to invent a whole new process, but biodiversity net gain is there. Maybe it could be a more useful process for getting these things done. But I guess for biodiversity net gain, it's specifically for new development that's happening. What about for places that aren't changing, the streets and the neighborhoods that will stay, pretty much the same into the future? What would you like to see happening in those places, or in other campuses as well?
I think that's a great point. I think, again, you can just expand on things. You build an extension on your house, and that's an existing space. Why an extension without a flat roof and green on top of it? It's gonna capture all that rainfall and save that going into your drains at a cost to you. So really it's a no-brainer. I think we need to look at vertical spaces in urban environments, or even just maybe the use of permeable systems too. It doesn't have to be a concrete ramp that your car is parked on. I mean, Liz has obviously done some fantastic work. I think she's spoken about this, about having permeable substances at Nottingham College. Well, everyone's driveway needs to be permeable. These kind of changes need to happen. And I think it's too easy to go online and pick up the average Joe who's good at pouring concrete. There's a place for that. But equally, we need to be promoting these systems as being, or incentivize them. That's why I see things needing to change.
That's great. Thank you, Ben. That's great, guys. I think I've gotten a lot out of this conversation. I found it really inspiring, actually, and great to hear your perspectives from the field, from actually delivering these projects. Does anyone have any final points or anything you just want to share with the audience before we close?
I think a source of inspiration for me, Chelsea Flower Show. It doesn't have to be, all of the fantastic border work and all these things. But if you have a look at the RSPCA Garden 2023, Martin Wilson designed it, collaboration. Absolutely amazing project. It's a tiny, tiny space. It has hundreds of different species, hedging species, tree species, all of these plants planted for pollination. It's got water supply, viewing areas for birds. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And it just shows you what you can do in a tiny little space. It doesn't have to be the size of Chatsworth House to encourage nature in. So take a look at that for inspiration and see if it's something you can do in your own gardens.
Yeah, I was going to just say as well, in response to what Ben said, it's like people think, oh, I've only got a small amount of land and it doesn't really matter what I do with it. And that's kind of a lot of the feedback I've been getting, like, well, it's not going to make that big a difference what we're doing here. Has been that's one of the challenging attitudes I've had from certain people. But if you look at an aerial map of the city, obviously it's made up of a patchwork of all of these different small patches of ground, small areas. And like Ben was saying, if you can just do what you can in your own small area, and then it spreads out, you can talk to other people about it as well, become a champion for that kind of gardening or that kind of space management, land management. And if everybody across the city did it, we wouldn't kind of be in the biodiversity mess that we're in now. It's like we'd have much kind of healthier ecosystems to enjoy.
That's really lovely, I think, to end on. I think there's so many things you can do. Like, even if you've just got a balcony, there's, you can add some planters, you can do little vertical spaces, having sort of just not using pesticides, for example, is a really great one. If you've got a garden, a hedgehog highway, and talking to neighbours about getting a hedgehog highway across the whole street is a really nice action. So there's lots of small things people can do, and I think there's a lot more community involvement now I've seen in the last sort of 5-10 years of people going out and sowing wildflower seeds, for example, in areas that potentially have nothing there currently. So even if you don't have a garden, there's definitely something you can do.